All right, Marina, today you're the CEO of Create Cultivate, but every story has a beginning. And I saw a quote on your website, and I'm going to read it verbatim here so I don't mess it up. But it says, I have been afforded many opportunities since I was a little girl. And most of these opportunities have come from other women willing to hold the door open for me. So I'm curious, before we really dive into the nitty gritty of everything, what was the first door you remember being opened for you?
Oh my God, what a phenomenal question. I remember writing that note right when, I acquired Create and Cultivate, right before this position really started. And all I kept thinking through is the opportunities of like women that supported me, whether it was, one of my managers at Yahoo when I worked there, or even my older cousins and my mom, and, like just thinking through everybody that has helped me. I don't know if I remember the first door that has opened for me, but I do remember the first door where I felt I could be more than just what I set out to be. And so I kind of give more detail on that. I had a manager at Yahoo. Her name was Kristen, and she was a mom. She is a mom of three. And she was a director. So it was like my boss and my boss's boss. Like she just had a very high role. And she was the first woman that one was my manager that led with so much grace, that was a powerhouse in her industry, that always advocated for me and felt like she was continuing to like mold me into this professional that I wanted to be in corporate. And she always prioritized dates with each one of her kids. So her two boys and her daughter. She would leave work early to do pickup. When she traveled, and she traveled a lot, she would get all of like her kids' clothes organized and labeled and everything like that. And at the time I was 26 when I started, 27 when she was my manager, and like 28, 29. And I was obviously a mom, and Sebastian was much younger. And I always just look and I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can do both. I can be thriving in my career and being a present, amazing mom. And that was the first time that I like had really seen a true example of that outside of my own mom with me.
That's huge because I know when I was in the corporate world, I actually struggled to figure out how I could fit in that
Yeah.
space and have both. But as I've stepped away from it, it's so clear that we can have it. It just might look different than maybe we originally imagined. But
Yeah.
your story with Kristen, like, wow, what an example. And what a
Totally.
blessing that she was to be able to be put in your presence. To
Yeah.
not only be the powerhouse example of what it takes to be like a great businesswoman, but also the home front of like, you're a solid mom. Like, the dates with her kids, that's the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Right? I know. It's funny because I also I had a male manager beforehand who was still great in his own way, but just didn't get it. And I felt like there was a lot of guilt when I took time off, or if Sebastian was sick and I had to work from home. Like a lot of that stuff, it wasn't like natural for my original manager to like provide to me. I would say the other thing is too, there was definitely a lot of different experiences being a mom in the corporate world. And so I really resonated with what you said. Like I definitely wasn't always invited to things. People just assumed I wasn't available because I had to go home to Sebastian. And so it was a different experience than I had anticipated. But yeah, I'm so happy that I ended my tenure there with Kristen as my manager, because she definitely like paved the way of how I could do things.
Well, and I also like that too because she didn't seem to be like threatened by your capabilities. Instead, she celebrated them. And I think sometimes, like when I was in corporate, like you see a whole gambit of different types of personalities. And I think you and I being in the spaces that we are, you mentioned you're a girl's girl. I saw that on your website too. And I think that's important that we lift each other up and we celebrate each other and we help get each other to where we want to go together. And that also seems like the example that was set from you very early on with Kristen. Shout out to her.
Yeah, shout out to Kristen.
Yeah, shout out to Kristen. So you were mentioning you were at Yahoo from like 26, 27. Why entrepreneurship?
It's funny because I grew up with my parents being entrepreneurs. When we came to the US, they owned
Mhm.
pizzerias. They would like own it, build it, and then sell it. Definitely like we struggled early on, but eventually like they got like their rhythm. But I never identified as them as entrepreneurs, and so I definitely saw that growing up, but I didn't know that that's what it was called, right? Nobody really used that word, and so when I got laid off, so I ended up working for Yahoo, then Tumblr, then Yahoo News, and I ended up getting laid off December 2019. I had already built somewhat of a personal brand online. I had a community online, and people really knew me for different things, whether it was being a mom or I loved fitness, and I would talk a lot about that at that time, or talking about corporate life, like whatever it was, I was always sharing and building my personal brand on my social. And so when I got laid off, my husband was like, "Hey, you wanted to go out on your own, like why don't you try it?" I definitely did not know what I was getting myself into by any means, but it just felt like it was, my back was against the wall. I was like, all right, like what else do I have to lose? I can always go and try to find another job, which is really in hindsight such a privileged way of thinking, of just like, oh, I'll just, try this out and I'll eventually go by and get another job. And like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I kind of just like accidentally became an entrepreneur.
Well, and the timing of it's really interesting because it was December 2019, and just a few months later, the entire world shut down too.
Absolute worst timing in the history of timing. And it's funny because I used to call myself like the queen of pivoting, the professional pivoter, because I got laid off. I then said I was going to become a lifestyle content creator. And then I did that for a month and I hated it. And then I was like, I'm going to start an events business. And then COVID happened and no events were available. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so good. So one thing after the other, I was just getting a hit. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start, make anything that I wanted to teach in person virtually and start these courses. I just always felt like, okay, well, this didn't work out. Let me try this. This didn't work out. And I realized that's just kind of how I am. And I don't know why I'm like that. It just like is very ingrained in me and natural, probably just coming from immigrant parents. But yeah, it was definitely the worst timing.
Those are great qualities to have as an entrepreneur because resilience is needed and the ability to be like adaptable and pivot at any given notice, because that's like how you grow. Because like if it's not working, then figure it out until it does, right?
100%. And I'm a big believer that you're actually just not going to be able to figure it out unless you actually try, because that's
Mhm.
where the data comes from. That's where oh, okay, that didn't work because this happened, or let me try it on this different day or different season or whatever. But like, you got to actually take action to figure out, to one, build confidence and also figure out what you like and what you don't like. I use the example of like when I did my internship. I originally went to school for criminal justice and I did my internship at the maximum prison in Cranston, Rhode Island. And I
Oh my.
realized very quickly, I no longer want to do criminal justice and it was not for me. And so then I went into marketing. I worked in a PR firm for a little bit and one of my interns hated that, so it was just like I was figuring it out along the way. And I remember with my internship, I said, thank God I did that internship because now I know I don't like that. If I didn't, I would have not known.
Right. It's interesting. Today, one of the episodes that went live from a previous podcast was the question of what if. And I know personally, I never want to look back on my life and ask myself that question, what if? And it sounds like you've kind of done that, where it's like you've explored all these different opportunities. So you won't have to go back and ask what if, because I don't want to work in a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
100%. Yeah, no, I do not do well with what ifs. I need answers and I
Yeah.
definitely lead with like a lot of curiosity always.
And that's important too as an entrepreneur, is to lead with curiosity. But you also mentioned you figured out what you liked along the ways. Throughout all of these experiences, what did you realize that you actually enjoyed doing and could see yourself doing moving forward?
Yeah, I really love the business side of business. I love finances. I love numbers. I love Excel sheets. I love creating strategies and bigger pictures. I always try to force myself to be this like creative, which I'm definitely creative in my own ways, in my own right. But if I had to pick between, you know, designing something or building out a 5-year forecast, I'd probably pick the forecast. I'm just obsessed with like understanding what the potential of something could be. And I didn't really realize that until, the past 2 years where I really felt myself diving into the numbers and margins and understanding if this happens, then this can happen. And if I do that, so it's just all of these scenarios that I really, really love.
Well, and so you didn't go to school for finance. This was something that you just learned that, oh, I actually have a knack for something like this. And why not explore it. And you said this was about 2 years ago?
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. So yeah, I went to school for marketing and business communications.
Yeah.
And so for marketing, that is really where the creative side comes out. But it's interesting because marketing takes a lot of strategy. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of thinking that goes through marketing before you see a picture or an ad or, you know what I mean? Something that is like online on a billboard, whatever it is. And so I really loved that process of understanding here's who I want to target. Here's how many people I want to. If we do this many times, this is the result. And so, yeah, that's definitely still something that is integrated into what I do, but definitely didn't go to school for finance at all.
And so this was pre-acquisition of Create and Cultivate, correct? So okay, well, so what were you doing at that time that allowed you to realize that, "Oh, this is what I wanna do?"
Yeah. So when I launched Empowered Confidence, which was my original business, it was a consultancy business that I focused on helping female startups build their business, help them build their story, monetize their personal brand and their expertise. And I did that through masterminds, retreats, and courses. And being a solopreneur really forced me to double down on my numbers. I will tell you, I used to call myself a CEO at that time. I was definitely not a CEO. Now that I am an actual CEO, I was like, oof, I was definitely not a CEO. There's like so much difference between that and really what I'm doing now. So I would say like having that experience of being a solopreneur, figuring out my own numbers really helped me. And then going into Create and Cultivate and acquiring the business, I've never bought a business before. And so this is my first time and I was figuring it out along the way. You know, my husband is in finance. And so a lot of questions came up. I was like, what does this mean? What does valuation mean? What does this asset mean? And so, yeah, it took like just doing it and being in the process of these new experiences to get me to where I am for sure.
And speaking of experiences, one of the things that I really liked about your story is the fact that you went to every single Create and Cultivate event for an entire year. Do you
Yeah.
mind just walking us through and like why? And two, like how did you make that happen? Because did you have the vision for this or was this something that just unfolded?
Yeah, it definitely was something that unfolded. With Yahoo, I'll take a step back. With Yahoo, I went to a lot of conferences, lots of business conferences, Ad Week, CES. I mean, you name it, I've probably been to it. And they're all the same. I used to work in trade shows, and so I would go to all these different trade shows. They're all the same. They're majority male dominated. There are a lot of like sponsored brands on site that are just like trying to push out whatever product is relevant to them, but not product that's relevant to the audience, because what they're looking to do is like on a larger scale for a launch, right? And so I thought that was just what the events business was.
Yeah.
And so when I got laid off, COVID happened and I spent essentially the year being a solopreneur. It was very lonely. And so now the world is starting to come out again. And so I would Google women conferences, women entrepreneurial conferences, and Create and Cultivate came out. I had attended like a virtual, I think, event during COVID, but they came out with this October event, October 21. It was my first event. It was in New York. And I was like, I'm going to go. Like, why not? It was the best event. I remember sitting in the front row and like taking all the notes. I mean, I still have my notebook. I have to eventually like take content of it and post it, but like it was stacked. I was just writing notes the whole entire time. I was in awe of these amazing speakers that were all, so their success was so attainable. I felt like I could do it, like I was right there. They would talk about their struggles. They would talk about what resources that really helped them. They would talk about things that at traditional events, you would never hear the speaker talk about.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, this is so different. And the women there all either came by themselves or came with another person that also had a big dream or a big goal. And so that was very different than the other events that I had attended.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I love it here. I don't know what the heck this place is, but I'm going to go to every Create and Cultivate event. Like, why not? Right? I'm a business owner. I'm going to take some of my budget, my lack thereof, but I'm this made up budget, and I'm going to spend it on going to these events. And so I went to October 2021. Then I went to March 2022, Austin during South by Southwest. That was an insane event, massive. Then I flew to LA in June or July, and then back to New York in October.
Wow.
And so from 2021, end of 2021, all of 2022, I was going to the Create and Cultivate events.
Well, and there's one thing just to go to an event. There's another thing to go to the event, like really absorb it and really use it to propel your business forward. Because that's obviously what you were doing, was like you were trying to grow your business. What did you do at these events that you feel like set you apart from the other attendees?
I don't think much, if I'm being honest. I think that I was definitely integrated into the attendees' experience. And so I actually am not the best networker. I'm definitely working on it and getting better. But at that time, I was terrified. I was literally like so nervous walking into these events, especially because I was going by myself. And I always felt this imposter syndrome of, oh, well, like, who are these cool creators and entrepreneurs and business owners? And although maybe someone could have viewed me as also cool, I didn't identify myself as that, right? And so it would be
Right.
very nervous for me to go into these rooms, but I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. My husband would be like, hey, this is your goal. And he said it at my first event that I went to, and it really stood with me. He was like, go find 5 people, connect with them, and then get the hell out of there if you don't want to be there anymore. And always after the 4th to 5th person, I was like, well, I'll stay. Like, I kind of like it, And so I
I
feel
love
like
that.
that was kind of like the trick point. But I don't know if I did anything that made me stand out from an individual perspective. The one thing that I do want to call out that I am very proud of myself for doing, and it's something that I've always done my whole life, is if I find information or receive information, I'm always implementing it.
Mhm.
I'm one of the fastest executors ever. Like, I'm just like, okay, this person used this mail platform. I'm going to email platform. I'm going to go home. I'm going to try this new email platform and I'm going to see if it works, and then I'm going to send this many emails. If this person was like, hey, you should try to post this many times and I was always doing it. And so I think that that's what stood out in my career, is that I was always executing things. I wasn't just in the room to get the information. I would get the information and then I would do something with that information. And that is, I think, what helped me kind of propel me forward throughout, the past few years.
I love that. And I have to give a shout out to your husband too, because I think that's such great advice to be your little cheerleader, like pepping you on and saying
Yeah.
like, you've got this. And also to say like just 5 women, because it really takes the like grandiose level of the whole event and really like simplify it a little bit, gives you like that mini challenge, just like connect with 5 women. And you said after the 4th one, it was easy and you were actually loving it. And it's
100%.
interesting. I was supposed to go to Mom Party, which I know you were supposed to be at. So I had already
Yeah.
signed up and I was excited. I was going to go by myself, and it was going to be in Denver. So I would have to fly there. So it was definitely, for someone with a 20-month-old, it was a lot of planning to get there. And I was so excited. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out, and I understand why. But one of the things, my husband also gave me a pep talk, and he said, if you're going, like, make a hotel or make a reservation for breakfast the next morning after following the event, and find some women that you connect with
Listen.
and invite them to breakfast.
Oh my God. Matt, if he could force me have dinner with someone every time I'm traveling, he would. He was like, make a reservation, go get. And I'm like, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to talk to anyone anymore. He's like, no,
I
you have
understand.
to.
Especially, I don't know about you, but I'm like an introverted extrovert where I
Oh,
love
yeah.
people, but I also need to recharge. So, but to put
Always.
yourselves in these situations where you are like trying to like better yourself and better your business and the betterment of your family too, because it's all tied together. Like, we do have to put ourselves out there. And I think that's like when we're talking about these Create and Cultivate events in particular, some of them can be rather large. And I think that's really great. What you said is just to be able to simplify it, find like a small group of women that you really vibe with, and you never know what can happen.
Totally. And so it's funny because, talking through this in hindsight, we have a program that we launched for festival. It's called Connect. And when I was thinking through Connect, I was thinking through the me. I'm uncomfortable at large scale events. I also don't want to meet 2,000 people. I just don't. Like, they're probably not everybody in the 2,000 people are relevant to my life and what I want, and vice versa. And so I always felt like, the women that have opened the doors for me and the right connections have truly changed my trajectory. And so I always have this question of like, if we can connect the right 2 people, and that can change the lives of them and their personal and professional trajectory. Like, isn't that the point?
Yeah.
And so created this program called Connect that would, like, when attendees create their profile, it has like their algorithm, their category, their interest, and then their intent. So if you're looking for a job, if you're hiring, if you're looking for an investor, if you're investing yourself, if maybe you're networking, maybe you're like, want to talk about burnout, like whatever it is, You pick those categories and everybody does that. And then our algorithm will match you with the right person. And so you can meet 16 people in person that are relevant to exactly what you want to do. And that number was so important because it was 4 times. We do like 2 meeting slots in a day. It was just 4 people. All you had to do is 4 people. But the best part is like, you pre-schedule them. So you're not nervous meeting them. You've already you've communicated. Yeah, like you've communicated, you both want to meet each other. And so say you're a founder and you want to meet with an investor, like you're not as nervous. You know they want to meet with you and you want to meet with them. Amazing. Now all you have to do is go. You have 15 minutes to chat. So it's not like hours. You can leave right after the 15 minutes. So if it doesn't work out, you're done. You know what I mean? And so it was just really like thought out in that sense of like, how can we just make these quick connections? Because similar to me and you, like, it's just, I'm an introverted extrovert. Like I get really nervous in these spaces sometimes. And so, yeah, it was like one of the biggest reasons why we launched that Connect.
Well, and I've had the opportunity to interview quite a few women over the last almost 3 years. And one of the biggest things that they say here is to be able to like get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's clearly what we're all doing here, but
Totally.
also to like put yourselves in rooms with other people that are doing the thing too. And that's exactly what you've created. And then on top of that, what they're also saying is to create something that you like either wanted when you were in that specific stage or that you need today. And I
Yeah.
think that what I've seen from like an outsider looking into these businesses is that's where like the most like purposeful businesses are built. It's like when you're actually creating it from like a deeper purpose, a deeper need that you specifically had and really wanted when you were at these events yourself.
Totally.
So I think that's great. So,
Thank
okay.
you.
So you like obviously went to all these events and then you decided to acquire Create and Cultivate and become the CEO. So can we talk about that? Like how did this opportunity like come and like how did the door get opened for you in this instance?
Yeah, such a good question. So before that, I had a mutual friend with Jacqueline Johnson, who's the original founder of Create and Cultivate. For context, she had already sold the company to private equity, so she was
Okay.
no longer operating the business. She was just like a small portion of it, and I had one of her friends, and I became friends. I asked if Jacqueline could be on my podcast. She came on my podcast. I had a podcast at the time called She Did It Anyway. I interviewed her and that was it. And similar to what you said earlier, I just want to touch on it of like creating an experience or a solution to a problem that you have. I was investing a lot of money into finding different masterminds in different groups. And a lot of the masterminds and groups that I was in were amazing, but they were led by people that were entrepreneurs just like myself and that have been in business, a couple years more than me. And I really felt strongly about how badly I wanted to learn from the Ali Webbs, who's the founder of Dry Bar, exited Dry Bar for $255 million. The Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. Like I wanted to be in the room with them. Because I wanted to know how they did it and learn directly from them. That didn't exist. And so I have no idea, absolutely no idea why I had this idea to urge to do this. I was driving and I was like, what if I started a mastermind with Jacqueline Johnson? No idea why. It came out of nowhere. I'm driving and I take my phone and I send talk to text and it said, I'm going to send this before I talk myself out of it. Have you ever thought about starting a mastermind? She quickly, crazy enough, said, yeah, why? What do you have in mind? And it was just the perfect timing. And I was like, I've been doing these masterminds. I have kind of tapped out of my network. Here's the margins that I can, here's what I've done, all of this stuff. And she was like, okay, cool. Ali Webb is also interested in starting a mastermind. Like, would you want to do it? The 3 of us. And I'm like, what? This is crazy. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I remember being on a call. It was my intro call. I had double ear infection and strep throat. And I was like, I cannot cancel this call. I'm like profusely sweating on the call. And I'm walking through the financials of like what I put together. And like now knowing in hindsight, I didn't have to do any of that. But I was like, put it all together. I presented this thing and they said yes. And we got our legal docs created. I flew to LA and we had our photo shoot and we launched the blueprint. And I'm just like, we're doing the blueprint. Like I was thinking nothing of it. And Jacqueline had the opportunity to acquire the assets of Create and Cultivate. And so she called me on the way home from the blueprint. So just a few months after us launching this. And she said, hey, if I do this, I'll only do it if you do it with me. Would you go half and do this together? And would you operate and be the CEO? And I was like, what? Of course, in my head, I was like, what? And to her, I was like, absolutely. Like, do it. Like, no, no thought. And I remember flying home from Napa with that message, and I, sent it to my husband and sent it to my group chat. And I was like, guys, this is a crazy thing. Like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but this is crazy. And everybody, was celebrating me. This is amazing. And like, it was just funny looking back at it, because I think sometimes people think like my goal must have been like to set out to do that. But my goal originally at Create and Cultivate was to be a speaker. Like, I had never thought to be anything else. I didn't think that was an option. But what I did want to do is continue to grow in my career. And so it's just like one step in front of the other, and you just let life like happen for you, and it just, things come out of it, as long as you're just showing up as yourself.
It's so interesting. I was on a podcast earlier today and he asked me what my 5 and 10-year plan was. And I honestly said, I couldn't tell you exactly what it's going to look like, but I can tell you how I want to feel and like
Mm.
how I want to grow during those times. And that's kind of when I'm picturing when you're describing this, it's like you didn't have it calculated. You were just looking to grow as a human and as a professional. And what I also find is really interesting is that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you didn't have like a huge relationship with Jacqueline other than just like the podcast interview. So it literally was just this hunch that you had that you said, you know what? I'm not going to overthink it. Like, this is what I'm feeling called to do. Like, let me send a little voice note. And immediately she responded, yeah, what did you have in mind?
It
Like,
was the craziest thing. It was totally
yeah,
a crazy thing.
like sometimes I don't want to get like too woo, but I feel like some things are just meant to be. Like,
100%. And she says that all the time. I'm definitely more woo woo than she is. And she's like, everything happened perfect timing. She was in a perfect space in her life where she was looking for something new and something creative. I was in a space where I was really hungry and looking to expand. This was way out of my comfort zone. Um, Everything aligned perfectly. And like, yeah, it was very much like it was just meant to be.
well, even to the point where you said you came with like this whole business plan ready to go and like you didn't need it, but that also just further justified your role as CEO for Create and Cultivate. Like you came prepared, you had strategy in place, which she's sounds like more of the creative in this space from what you were talking about. And like the combination is just a powerhouse couple. And wow, like I'm blown away, like goosebumps. I didn't know it was like it started from a voice note.
Yeah, it started literally from a voice note. I always say that like I always try to advise people or push people to live in that sweet spot between idea and fear. Like, I'm the queen of talking myself. I could potentially talk myself out of anything, and I can think of every bad scenario and worst case scenario. But I try to, the second I have an idea, and my team knows this and they probably hate it about me, but the second I have an idea, I'm like, let's do it. Because I don't want to think about why it could go wrong. I just want to try it. Like, let's just see, And so try to always live in that sweet spot of fear, of idea and fear. And I'll also say, the good thing about Allie and Jacqueline is that they saw more in me than I did in myself at that time. That's
Mhm.
the same with my husband. That's the same with my parents. That's the same with my friends. Try to surround yourself with people that see more for you and more in you, because it will push you to a limit or to a point where you might not get there on your own. You know what I mean? Like for Allie and Jacqueline, they always say it's like you were born to be a CEO. And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that until now." But they saw that right away. And so I think like just surround yourself with people that do big things, that can dream bigger for you and for themselves, for sure.
Well, and to that point too, sometimes like you're very fortunate to have a very supportive network internally within like your close immediate family with your husband and your folks. But sometimes like it takes putting yourself in like uncomfortable positions, like networking and meeting other people outside of like your intimate circle, because sometimes they are able to see even more clearly what your strengths are without also worrying about you taking those risks and like everything you could potentially kind of, I'm putting in air quotes, but lose by like
Yeah.
moving forward and taking maybe not like the safe path moving forward. So like getting yourself inside of like these events or going to these events, like finding these communities, it's truly, I know it's changed my life, and clearly it's changed yours.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. It's not even just for Create and Cultivate. You just find whatever room, like masterminds, retreats, conferences, communities, and get yourself in there, because it is so powerful. Like you just feel like you have this like group of strangers that then become family that will just continue to push you, for sure.
Good. Well, I have to ask, like, obviously your life has completely changed since you were over at Yahoo as working as a young mom and today being the CEO of Create and Cultivate. Like, what has kind of been the most like pinch me moment that you
The most pinch me moment. I've had so many. I've had so many pinch me moments because every time I'm like, this is crazy. Like every day I'm like, this is crazy. My first pinch me moment was when we bought the company. I was like, I always, my like favorite line is like, I've never done this before, right? And like, I'll do it anyway. And then it's like, we raised money and after the call with VCs and closing the deal, I'm like, you guys know I've never done this before, right? Like I'm just like always very clear about that, to my team. And it's the best part. But I think every new experience is a pinch me moment that I get to do that. But I shared a little story with you before we started recording of Sebastian on the way home today at school. He was like, oh, your work seems so much fun. Do you have so much fun doing it? And it was definitely an aha moment of like, I need to have more fun. And these are cool experiences. I'm building a massive festival for women. Like, what am I stressed out about? Of course, it's a lot of work, but like, I think it's this like reframe moments for me, like throughout of rather than pinch me moments, they're just like, aha, like, oh, okay, I can be really excited for this, or this is new. Like I've never done this before and be proud of myself. So lots of little moments throughout.
I have to say, I admire a lot of things about you, but this conversation has really shown me how humble you are. And I think that also, like, as you grow, like, it keeps you grounded and, like, also understanding, like, the needs of the people that you're creating these events for and recognizing that, like, I'm still one of them too. Like, what do I
Yeah.
need? I still have a family, a son that's looking up to me. And I think that that's just a huge takeaway for me today. It's like, as we grow, like, to stay humble and appreciative because that, like, it really helps us just mentally and attract like all the right people into our world as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That means a lot. I think the biggest thing is I hope that if there's anything that people take away from like my story or how I show up or anything is just like we're all the same. Some of us have just been doing things a little bit longer or have failed more than you see. And it's just like you kind of just keep going. And so that's kind of the goal of how I show up. And so I appreciate you saying that.
No, I appreciate you coming on today. And I know that you have the festival coming up here in my neck of the woods over here in LA in end of July, I believe. And then we also have an event for moms coming in October. So I know I'm excited about both of those. So if you're wanting to learn more, I'll put everything in the show notes. But if people want to find you, where could they go ahead and find out more?
Yeah, so Instagram is really where I hang, Marina A. Middleton. If anybody had like a big takeaway from this episode, love, like my favorite thing is like sharing what that takeaway is. It really helps like me know what resonates and it also helps me feel also comfortable with the things that I share, publicly. So definitely message me on Instagram. And then createcultivate.com is all the events and really anywhere you can connect with me in person.
Wonderful. And speaking of takeaways, I always like to end the show with one last piece of advice. So if there's a woman out there listening today that's either wanting to start their business or relatively early in their career or in their entrepreneurial journey, what would you tell her?
Okay. I don't think I've given this advice, and so I'm just gonna go with this one. One of the things that I did that helped me think bigger for myself was a like solo day or day and night for myself in the city. I did it in Boston. I live in Boston. I just got a hotel room. It was like a cheap little hotel room and I literally locked myself in. I got room service. I got a massive, what is it called? Like massive post-it. And I got like markers and I was just writing what I envisioned for myself. That I asked was like, what do I want someone to know about me? What do I want people to think of me when I'm not in the room? Like, how do I want them to think of me? When do I want them to say my name? Like, those were certain things that I wrote down. What are characteristics? How do I want to show up? What are things I want to do? And so if there's any advice is do that once a quarter if you can, once a year if you can. It will really help you just feel kind of refreshed and excited for the new chapter of what you want to build.
I have to say that I haven't received that advice yet. So that's like a big gold star as far as something new and fresh and something that I think I needed to hear today as well, not just for the listeners, but I'm a busy mama building a business during nap times and after my son goes to bed. So it's hard to get time like that's uninterrupted. So to be able to like schedule this where there's no interruptions and you just get to focus on you. I know as moms, that's rare. So that's just great advice, not only if you're an entrepreneur, but also if you're a mom building a business as well.
100%. I think that was really why I asked for it originally. I think it was like a Mother's Day gift. They're like, "What do you want?" I was like, "A night alone by myself." And they're like, "What?" It was really important because I felt like I wasn't nurturing my creative and professional side as I needed to. And so yeah, I hope that someone takes that advice and actually does it.
Well, this has been just such a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you opening the door for us into your life today.
Thank you so much. You're the best.
You too.